Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about one of the big problems we run into when we give training advice is that when we point out to people that something is a very valuable or very useful training tool, people want to be very reductionist in their thinking and say, well, if it's a great tool, then I need to use it all the time for everything that I do. And while at first that might seem like a good idea, what people don't understand is that all these training tools that we use are just tools in a toolbox. And the more advanced you get, the more useful it becomes to incorporate more of these tools and rotate through them. But when people hear that, and I'll give you an example, max effort training. How about speed work, compensatory acceleration, exploding with a weight as fast as you can, utilizing a stretch reflex, doing dead stop training, right? Focusing on certain movements on full range of motion of the joint or the exercise. A lot of these different tools that we utilize are just tools. That's what they are. And it's like saying, okay, so if this is a great tool, if a hammer is a great tool, and a hammer is a great tool, I mean, a good quality claw hammer, I mean, that's an invaluable tool for any sort of construction or building a house or building anything, right? But we don't look at that and say, well, that's a great tool, so I'm going to use it for everything. I'm going to use it to drive screws in. I'm going to use it to cut sheetrock. And I mean, you could technically drive screws with a hammer. You could technically take sheetrock and bust all along the edges and lay it down, and if you're careful with it, you're really careful, you might get a semi-straight, jagged edge. You could cut sheetrock with a hammer. Okay? Doesn't mean it's the best tool to use all the time for everything. No, only an idiot would think that it is. Could you possibly get away with it and half-ass do everything? Sure. Does that make a claw hammer not an amazing tool for driving a nail or pulling nails out with? No, it's a phenomenal tool. It's an invaluable tool. It would be very difficult to build any sort of building or construction without one. It could be done. I mean, again, you could use bigger crowbars to pull nails, and you could just use air tools and nail guns, but you could do that. But a hammer's an invaluable tool. Training is the same way. Okay? Training tools are the same way. The best approach is to incorporate a variety of tools at the right times. So we don't look at something and say, well, Jason, you said that exploding with a weight as fast as you can recruits more muscle fibers. So why shouldn't we be doing it all the time? Well, because it's just not necessary. And for people who are trying to achieve significant amounts of workloads and fatigue, maybe for a lot of your hypertrophy training or volume training or stuff where we want to increase work capacity, it may not be the best approach. Now, what people need to understand is that when I discuss this stuff today, it's all inside the context of conjugate training, where we use everything. Right? We use all these training tools every single week. We don't periodize them into different blocks. So if a person is already getting their speed training on their 2 speed days every week, and we're exploding as hard as we can on 1 rep maxes 2 days a week, is it that big of a deal? Right? Does everything need to be explosive training and compensatory acceleration? No. Look right there. I'm doing rep work with closed grip at the axle bar. Right? Repping it out. Those are slow and controlled. Now, people say, but Jason, when you get more quality reps per set if you did this, well, who cares? If I reach maximum quality reps, was there any advantage to going faster? Did I gain any advantage from going faster on that? No. Because I'm trying to generate fatigue, and here's the other thing to think about. What if we're trying to train multiple performance elements? What if we also want to increase work capacity? Are you going to increase work capacity if you explode as hard as you can and you run out of steam by rep 5 with the same weight, rep 6? No. Because we're training these different modalities. We want these different performance elements. You don't want strength stamina? You don't want work capacity? Well, it has its place. We're already exploding as hard as we can on max work and speed work every week. It doesn't become a big deal to say, hey, these other movements are going to be a little more controlled. Why? Because we're trying to build work capacity. We're trying to induce fatigue to maximize hypertrophy. Okay? And we're trying to hit these different performance elements and periodize them throughout the week into different training days. All right? And we increase work capacity off the back end. And by doing a lot of these more controlled movements, the way a lot of, say, bodybuilders would do them, we're getting everything. And, people would say, but Jason, you're not necessarily hitting the upper threshold fibers as quickly. Well, we've already hit those upper threshold fibers on max day. So let's say, like the example that close grip pressing you see me doing, that was after a max effort bench. We've hit the upper threshold fibers. They're already pre-fatigued going into the rep work. Okay, because there's a difference, and that's what people need to understand when we use these different tools. Okay, if you come in and you do 3 sets of 10 on an exercise, yes, it has a certain training effect if it's controlled. If you've done a 1 rep max first, it's a completely different training stimulus for the whole workout. Nothing is done in isolation. Okay? Just because you use a training method or a rep and set scheme or modality or anything else doesn't mean that it functions independent of the other stuff you've done in the same day. So if you've come in and you've hit a max already, guess what? You have fatigued the upper threshold muscle fibers. The fastest twitch fibers have been hit hard for that max. And people say, but it's only 1 rep. No, it's not only 1 rep. You did several reps ramping up to it, and you hit those fibers on all of them. Okay, let's say your max is 400 pounds, but let's say you went 300, 340, 360, 380, 400. Okay, those last few reps all hit that stuff. You've also prepared your nervous system more, peripheral nervous system for heavier weight. So you actually are re-hitting those upper threshold fibers again on the volume work. But then we're increasing work capacity. But you see where we're going with this? We look at that and say, well, max effort work is a phenomenal tool, so why don't we just do it all the time? Well, that doesn't make sense. We have all these different training tools that we say these are good tools, so we figure out how to weave them together into a system that functions. Just like when you're building a house, you use a wide variety of different tools to efficiently and effectively build that house. Well, in building an athlete, it's the same way. We use these different tools because we want work capacity. We want explosiveness. We want maximum strength. We want all of these things. We want conditioning. So we need to use a wide variety of tools and use them appropriately. Not get caught up in the idea that, well, you said this is a great tool. You said I should move the weight as fast as possible because of blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do it all the time. In fact, there are a lot of exercises where you're going to get hurt easier. Again, watch me do these good mornings here. I think this was like a 17, 18 rep set after doing some heavier work. Okay? Do you really want to explode with those as hard as possible? I don't think that you do. Besides, we're going to do speed pulls in the same week. Those are going to be as fast as possible, and it's going to work those similar muscles. This is being done to generate metabolic fatigue purely to create and maximize our hypertrophy. And I'm not saying we don't get hypertrophy from the other stuff. We do. But in this case, we're trying to maximize body composition to go with the max strength and the explosiveness because it's beneficial. It builds greater work potential, builds greater strength potential. But these are more slow and controlled. We're just there building fatigue in the muscles that we want to build them in. Right? We don't have to use every tool all the time. And in fact, the argument could be made that it could be counterproductive and not ideal to always use this one really good tool on every single thing that you do. And I just gave a few examples. There's plenty of them. This could be applied to whatever you're doing in your training. Okay, something can be a great tool without you saying, oh, I need to use it all the time for everything, that it's the only tool. No, use them wisely. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.